Chapter 11. Treasure and the Charlatan. 2 days later, the ship arrived at Woe Island. The warship docked at the port, and Shaw led half of the accompanying marines to escort the 7 giants ashore, while the 3 CP9 agents quietly approached Figo again. "Warden Figo, you may go on holiday in the town on the island. For the following actions, we hope you won't participate, and it would be best not to follow." This was their second warning. "All right," Figo agreed readily once more. The 3 CP9 agents looked at him deeply before their figures disappeared, leaving 6 shallow footprints on the deck. "Shave." Figo rated their show of force with 1 point out of 10, sparing them a 0 to avoid making them cry. After pondering for 2 seconds, his figure vanished from the cabin just like the 3 CP9 agents. In a blink, he had mimicked and mastered the use of shave. Some things, once understood, become simple. For Figo, the Rokushiki techniques, while deadly weapons for officers, were now basic skills. Woe Island was small, with only 1 town. The 7 giants would be taken to the town center, displayed for half a day, and executed in the afternoon. Not too long, to avoid giants coming to rescue. Not too short, to ensure a deterrent effect. At least on the surface, that was the plan. Disembarking, Figo glanced towards the direction where the giants were being escorted but didn't follow the group. Some things shouldn't be concluded prematurely. Although the world government was the antagonist in the pirate world, Figo didn't think it was evil to that extent. The arrow pointing to Peslo might merely indicate that, as the head of CP9, Peslo knew the truth about the giant girl's death. Figo hoped so, otherwise, he'd have to report this to the fleet admiral and see his reaction. First, he would complete his original mission. He pulled up the prison files, found the page for Durham, and used the event direction function again. The arrow pointed towards the distant forest. Figo followed the arrow's guidance, making his way through the forest. He chased off a bear, a boar, and an ape-like gorilla, and eventually, he reached the endpoint indicated by the arrow. It had been 10 years since Durham buried the treasure, but the forest remained unchanged. Even the towering ancient tree Figo had seen in his vision was still there, making it easy to confirm the spot. Figo crouched down, measured the thick soil, and dug in with his hands. Armament Haki enhancement. Suddenly, his hands turned black, increasing in hardness and strength. He quickly dug through the soil, flinging dirt everywhere, and soon unearthed 2 small chests covered in dirt. He had successfully found Durham's treasure. Both chests were locked. Figo examined them for a moment, then picked up a small stick nearby. Poke poke, poke poke. Snap. The stick broke. Figo frowned and found another suitable small stick. Poke poke, snap. The stick broke again. He checked the prison files. Thievery, 273, level 2 skilled thief. Not good enough. Figo was troubled. He exerted force with his hands. Boom. The chest broke. Several strings of gold and silver jewelry fell out of the broken chest, scattering everywhere. Figo inspected the contents, then shattered the other chest containing various gemstones. Figo wasn't sure of their value but figured it must be worth several million berries, considering it was a pirate's treasure. After a moment's thought, he took off his jacket, laid it on the ground, placed the jewelry and gems inside, tied it up, and quickly ran towards the sea, finding a coastal cliff. The cliff wasn't high, only 5 or 6 meters. Figo double-checked Durham's event details. It didn't specify that the treasure must be thrown into the sea's center, this should suffice. Just as he was about to toss the bundle into the sea, he sensed a threat and tensed, looking up at the sky. In the next moment, crack! Out of a clear sky, a lightning bolt struck, bringing a patch of dark clouds that settled above Figo's head. Raindrops began to fall. The entire change took only 3 seconds. Even in the world of pirates, this couldn't be natural. Sure enough, a clear female voice rang out from a distance, "Please stop." Figo saw a woman dressed in blue nun's attire quickly approaching him. The woman had a delicate face, fair skin, curly golden hair, a graceful figure, and large, clear eyes that reflected the soul. She was the most beautiful woman Figo had seen since crossing over. The only flaw was the cigarette slanted in her mouth, giving her a roguish air, yet contradictorily emitting a holy radiance. "This is a warning from the gods." She spread her arms, pointing to the dark clouds above Figo, and said, "The gods have bestowed you with wealth, and you intend to throw it into the sea. Your wealth can aid the destitute. Support the elderly without dependence. Foster orphans in need. You should not discard it carelessly. Figo looked up, then down. His clothes hadn't fully covered the treasure, revealing a bit of gold, which had been noticed. Figo didn't believe the thunderclouds were a divine warning. It was surely a devil fruit ability. The rumble fruit? No, it didn't seem like it. Coincidentally, I am planning to establish a harmonious family that disregards race and conflict, where orphans of all kinds can live together. Meeting you here is perhaps divine guidance. Crack. Lightning struck again. The nun smiled at Figo. Aren't you going to follow divine guidance? Figo paused, then chuckled. A beautiful girl, why must you smoke, wear a nun's outfit, and pretend to be a charlatan? He felt a bit regretful. Turning, he tossed the bundle into the sea, then immediately followed by jumping in himself. The nun was stunned, shocked. She hurried to the edge of the cliff but stopped halfway. With a splash, the soaking wet Figo emerged, holding the treasure bundle and jumped back onto the shore, standing opposite her once more. Figo looked at the event details, indicating completion, allowing him to select another reward. He could choose any of Doom's dozens of abilities. He was delighted. Successfully exploited a loophole. The event required throwing the treasure into the sea, but it didn't say he couldn't retrieve it. This back and forth left the nun bewildered and stunned. Figo looked at her and asked, "Did your god tell you I was just using this treasure to practice my swimming? Trying to con Figo, the warden? I'll see you in jail." The nun was silent. After a while, she took the cigarette out of her mouth with two slender fingers, exhaling a puff of smoke. The holy glow faded. Killing intent surged. What bad luck! She had planned to practice, but encountered a lunatic instead. If she had known, she would have simply robbed him. Chapter 12. Sister Carmel. An aura of malice. Having guarded Impel Down for 8 years, Figo had honed his ability to detect malicious intent. This wasn't related to observation hacking but rather a keen intuition. As the nun across from him decided to snatch the treasure by force, Figo sensed it. He could even feel that her hands had taken more than a few innocent lives. She was no genuine nun. Crack. In the sky, within the dark clouds, lightning flashed again. The air was filled with a terrifying rumble. The rain poured harder. The heavy raindrops fell on Figo, blurring his vision and disturbing his senses. Then, boom! The sound of the thunder changed. A thick bolt of lightning descended straight from the sky, radiating heat that seemed capable of evaporating the ocean. It illuminated the dark sky with a blinding light as it struck Figo. Figo didn't look up, but his observation hacking allowed him to see the trajectory of the lightning and feel its power. It wasn't that impressive. Not comparable to natural lightning. One hand held the treasure. The other drew a sword from its sheath. As the blade gleamed, a flying slash shot from its tip like a crescent moon, rising into the sky to meet the lightning. The clash produced an even more dazzling light. The nun raised her arm to shield her eyes from the glare, feeling a twinge of unease for the first time. Figo was different from the other people she had deceived or robbed. When did such a powerful swordsman or warrior appear on Woe Island or the sea? In the next moment, her observation hacking also caught Figo's movement. His speed was fast, almost in an instant, crossing the tens of meters between them. Figo didn't use his sword, he swung the wet bundle of treasure roughly at her head. The treasure bag whistled through the air like a cannonball under Figo's strength. Humph! The nun flicked her fingers, causing the ash and ember from her cigarette to fall. The ember seemed alive, growing into a blazing fireball as it flew towards Figo. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds echoed. One was the sound of the fireball hitting Figo, turning his body below the neck into a man of fire. The other was the sound of the treasure bag escaping the flames and hitting the nun's head. Her delicate face first showed shock and disbelief, then quickly twisted in pain, saliva and broken teeth flying from her mouth. Her slender body was hurled into the air, flying dozens of meters before crashing to the ground, twitching and then falling unconscious. The dark clouds dissipated. Figo took a deep breath, looking down, and blew. Hoo! The burning flames vanished, leaving only 2 holes in his clothes, revealing Figo's unscathed body beneath, untouched by the fire. Figo had long mastered Tekai, and even without it, his body was as tough as steel. That bit of fire couldn't even scratch him. Why would she naively think Figo would dodge? A top-notch devil fruit. Third-rate everything else. This was a small fry meant for the 5th level of Impel Down, utterly unaware of how many eyes Figo had. Figo slung the bundle over his shoulder, then picked up the nun, placing her on his other shoulder. One hand holding the treasure, the other the unconscious beauty, he headed back towards the warship, feeling quite accomplished. At the warship, 7 or 8 Marines had stayed behind. Having spent days on the same ship, even the regular soldiers knew that Figo, who had been sunbathing on the deck every day, was a big deal, the former warden of Impel Down and soon to be Rear Admiral. They exchanged glances when they saw Figo return after just an hour or so with disheveled clothes and carrying a nun. The leading captain stepped forward and asked, "Warden Figo, what happened?" "Caught a con artist. Get me a jacket and a pair of sea prism stone handcuffs." "A con artist? Sea prism stone?" The captain glanced at the beautiful nun, hesitated for 2 seconds, then said, "Yes, sir. No doubt a looker." Despite her bloody face, the nun still looked good. Figo gently placed a pair of silver bracelets on her wrists, giving her a new home. Prisoner, Carmel. Level, SR3. Status, incarcerated. Crime Index, 91. Capture participation, 100%. Available benefits, Devil Fruit Development, not yet activated, Disguise, Business. Character Event, activatable. Whoa, a crime index of 91. That's high, even among the worst in Impel Down's 5th and 6th levels. Truly a devil in angel's disguise, much more than just a con artist. But the name Carmel, why did it sound so familiar? Figo pondered, come to think of it, she does look a bit like a female version of Sanji. Could she be Sanji's great-great-grandmother? Better check out her character event. Which? You notorious human trafficker, how dare you approach the world government? Did you think we wouldn't know your history? The scene appeared, and Figo was stunned. From his 8 years of experience, Figo knew the crime index was based on his values. It turned out she was a human trafficker, no wonder her crime index was so high. However, in the scene, it was CP9's Peslo questioning her again. Why always him? Carmel and Peslo sat across from each other in a secret room. Hearing Peslo's question, Carmel calmly took a drag on her cigarette and said, "No need for posturing. If you didn't want to cooperate with me, we wouldn't be meeting today." Peslo was silent momentarily, then said, "Let's hear your plan." "Hehe, let's put on a show together. My Sora no Mi allows me to disguise myself as a messenger of God. During the execution of the giant pirates, I will masquerade as a divine guide and rescue them to win the giant's trust. And then..." Carmel spread her hands, "I will then infiltrate Elbaf and establish an orphanage. Let's call it the House of Lambs, welcoming all orphans regardless of race or stance. Of course, focusing mainly on giants. I will act as the bridge between the world government and the giants. Through our operations, we can raise giant orphans for a while, then secretly sell them to the world government and navy. Think about it. You will easily gain the strength of the giants and have invincible giant marines." Peslo fell silent again. Carmel wore a greedy expression and smacked her lips, "And all I need is some money, just a little." The character event scene ended. Event requirement, help Carmel establish the House of Lambs, adopt orphans of various races, and sell them to the world government. The information was overwhelming for Figo to process. So, that was CP9's plan. The Sora no Mi, the future Yonko Big Mom's fruit, capable of imbuing non-living objects with souls. No wonder there was lightning and fire, it felt familiar. No wonder the name Carmel sounded familiar. Isn't this the old nun from the flashback, who raised Yonko Big Mom, got eaten by her, and had her portrait placed on the table? Chapter 13. CP9's Contingency Plan. Woe Island, Town Center. A makeshift platform had been erected, and 7 giants lay face down, chained and unable to move. The time was nearing noon, and more townsfolk gathered, pointing and murmuring about the giants awaiting execution. Many faces bore expressions of hatred and anger. The giant warrior pirates were far from benevolent, there wasn't an island near Elbaf that hadn't been raided by them. The public execution of the giants was a spectacle the townsfolk relished. In a secret room nearby, 3 CP9 members, now dressed in civilian clothing, were growing increasingly anxious. Where the hell is that hag? They had waited and waited, but Sister Carmel had not shown up. With the execution time drawing closer, Peslo gritted his teeth in anger, prepare to execute the contingency plan, damn it. The female CP9 agent remarked, I knew that Hag couldn't be relied upon. Using the contingency plan could cause trouble with that warden, Figo. The Navy will find out. It doesn't matter, they'll find out sooner or later. Peslo took a deep breath and said, if we move swiftly, and if that warden isn't nearby, he might not react in time. You mean to leave him stranded on the island? Another CP9 agent asked, surprised. Yeah, we'll notify him later. Peslo nodded, let's move. His figure vanished, speeding back towards the warship, while the other two focused on the execution platform. On the warship, Figo sat across from the unconscious Sister Carmel in her cell, feeling a bit troubled. It wasn't because he had inadvertently disrupted CP9's operation. After all, the nun had attacked him first. He had the moral high ground, what was there to fear? Moreover, cooperating with a human trafficker was no good, breaking up such a deal was for the best. What troubled him was what to do about the giant execution. Regardless of the moral implications of the world government's cooperation with human traffickers, it was clear that the government had no real intention of publicly executing the 7 giants. Perhaps they wanted to avoid further angering the already dismantled giant warrior pirates or hoped to gain the giants' power and recruit giant marines. But now, with the nun captured by Figo, the execution would proceed uninterrupted. This potential outcome involved Figo, which was bothersome. In any case, releasing a captured trafficker was out of the question. Glancing at the time, there were about half an hour before the execution. Figo opened the prison records and saw that the status of the giant, Kevin, had changed from incarcerated to being executed. If the execution concluded, his status would change to deceased. The corresponding page would turn grey, a detail Figo had learned over his 8 years at Impel Down. Better go check it out, Figo thought. Just then, Kevin's record turned a never-before-seen red, a striking and alarming color. Figo froze, rechecking the information. Status change, escaping. Figo instantly realized that CP9 had a backup plan. 2 minutes earlier, on the execution platform. Execution Supervisor Shaw observed the ever-growing crowd, the cries of kill them resounding. He felt nervous. Only he knew that this execution wasn't straightforward, the 3 CP9 agents would definitely act. But he didn't know the details. How would they act? Could the execution proceed? As he was fretting, a blur flashed before his eyes. The female CP9 agent suddenly appeared, throwing a punch at him while giving a signal. Simultaneously, muffled thuds indicated his subordinate marines being taken down by another CP9 agent. So straightforward. Shaw was shocked but had grown over the years. He quickly reacted, putting up a token resistance before being knocked down by the female CP9. In mere seconds, the 2 CP9 agents had neutralized all the marines on the platform. The crowd, who had been cheering for the giant's execution moments ago, now fell into chaos, scattering as a knife was flung into their midst by the male CP9 agent. Prison break. Why save the giants? Run. They're killing people. The town center erupted into pandemonium. The 2 CP9 agents quickly dismantled the chains binding the 7 giants. Get moving. The sudden change left the giants, resigned to their fate moments ago, stunned. Seeing the unfamiliar faces, they asked in confusion, "Who are you?" "No time to explain. Just follow us." The agents pretended to find the keys on Shaw and freed the giants. Despite their exhaustion, the giants instinctively trusted their rescuers and followed them off the platform. Though weak, they moved quickly, driving the townsfolk away and leaving the town in no time. It was then that they asked, "Where are we going? What's the plan?" "The Navy will react soon. We need to get off Woe Island and seize that warship," the female CP9 agent explained. "Seize the warship? No way." The giants halted, and a burly giant with a beard spoke, "That ship has Warden Figo from Impel Down." "That guy? We know. It's fine. He's not on the ship right now. We have a colleague securing the ship. Trust us." The 7 giants exchanged glances and chose to believe their saviors, heading for the warship. This was CP9's contingency plan. Without Carmel, they would earn the giants' favor themselves. How they'd proceed, they'd figure out. Peslo, who had gone ahead, intended to secure the ship. But as he reached the deck and saw Figo, his face changed drastically. "Figo! Why are you here?" "Oh, I had some business and came back. What are you up to? Figo asked with a nonchalant smile. Peslo was stunned. Conflicted, angry, speechless. His emotions flashed through, and he even considered trying to knock Figo out. Ultimately, he held back and resigned to telling the truth. The world government never intended to execute the giants. We were supposed to work with a nun to stage a rescue, earning the giants' favor and acting as a bridge between the world government and the giants to recruit giant marines. But the nun didn't show up for some reason, so we had to improvise. Fortunately, the giants don't know us. Our agents disguised as civilians have rescued the giants, and I was to secure the ship. Warden Figo, I hope you'll cooperate with the world government. Please disembark and enjoy a vacation on the island. I'll subdue the marines and complete our plan. When the dust settles, a ship will come to pick you up. Figo was shocked. A nun? Was she a golden-haired, pretty one? Peslo hesitated. Figo frowned, it really was her. What kind of partners did you pick? That woman attacked me out of nowhere. Peslo, and then? Figo pointed towards the cell. She's locked up in there. Peslo was livid, damn it all to hell. Chapter 14. Capturing Peslo. Stay calm. He doesn't seem to be doing this on purpose. The mission is crucial. Peslo hesitated, struggling to keep his voice down as he questioned, why did she attack you without reason? Figo responded, well, I might as well tell you. I have my own agenda for this trip. A notorious pirate in Impel Down wanted to lessen his suffering and revealed the location of some hidden treasure on Woe Island. I came to retrieve the treasure, but the nun saw the money and tried to con me. When that failed, she attacked. So that's it? Peslo thought, recalling Sister Carmel's greed. It wasn't surprising she'd act this way. It was unfortunate that she picked a fight with Figo right when their cooperation was most critical. Still, Figo's explanation was a relief. The world government hadn't shared the cooperation details with the Navy, fearing some staunchly just Marines might oppose working with Carmel, a known human trafficker. Although the world government didn't need the Navy's approval, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Figo's behavior was an abuse of power for personal gain. It showed he wasn't rigidly righteous, making him easier to deal with. I understand, Warden Figo. I'll handle the nun. Now, please go ashore, the giant pirates will arrive soon. Figo paused, then asked, I have another question. The nun exudes a malevolent aura, like some of the worst criminals in Impel Down. Where did you find her, and did you investigate her background? Peslo frowned, this has nothing to do with you, Warden Figo. It was clear Sister Carmel needed to be secretly executed and couldn't be left alive. Figo seemed disappointed and suddenly unbuttoned his shirt, pulling out a den mushi. Moshi moshi, moshi moshi. Admiral, things have developed unexpectedly. What should I do next? He asked. Peslo. When did he? Why? Was he trying to trap me? The 7 giant pirates were captured by our best marines at the cost of many lives, the authoritative voice of the fleet admiral came through. We can't just let them go. Peslo hurriedly interjected, Admiral, this mission is directly ordered by the 5 elders. I'll explain to the 5 elders myself, the fleet admiral continued. Figo, you've done well. Now, go capture the 7 escaping giants. Mobilize the marines and return them the way they came. I understand, Figo replied. What about the 3 CP9 agents? Humph, let them take a vacation on the island. Peslo, Admiral Oa. If this was your mission, there was no need for such secrecy. What's the real identity of the nun you captured, and what are your true objectives? Must I ask further? Peslo's face turned pale, unable to argue further. Figo smiled, all right, I understand. Goodbye for now, Admiral. Sorry, Peslo, but now you need to leave the ship, Figo said, putting the den mushi back into his shirt. Peslo trembled. Damn it, how did it come to this? Sacrifice? To maintain the world government's control, a little sacrifice was nothing. Aren't you afraid of greater chaos and more sacrifices if the giants rebel? The mission cannot fail. Anger surged within him, giving rise to boldness. He looked at Figo, who was lowering his head to put away the den mushi, and suddenly raised his right arm. Bam! A sharp, blade-like chop struck Figo's right temple. It connected. Now, sleep tight. The scene paused for 2 seconds. Figo frowned, slightly lifting his head, still towering over Peslo, and asked, "What are you doing?" "Peslo?" He looked at his successfully landed chop. Then at the clearly conscious Figo. What's going on?" Figo looked down again and pulled out the den mushi once more. Moshi, Admiral, you're still there, right? Peslo just hit me." Weren't you done talking?" Peslo was instantly drenched in cold sweat. After a brief silence, the Fleet Admiral's slightly weary voice came through, "Take him in too, but don't expose the details of the operation." "I understand," Figo said, lifting his head. Peslo felt a chill run through him. He tried to retreat, but Figo's hand was quicker, grabbing his face and slamming him sideways into the ship's deck. Boom! The Marines on the ship were all alarmed. "What happened? What's going on? Who's there? Warden Figo, is there an intruder?" They quickly gathered around. Since the 3 CP9 agents had kept a low profile, staying in their rooms, and only Shaw had interacted with them, the Marines only vaguely knew about their presence. Now, with Peslo in civilian clothes and smashed into the deck, they couldn't recognize him. So Figo said, "Yes, it seems to be a companion of the nun I captured. Bring some chains and tie up this intruder." Under Figo's grasp, Peslo clenched his fists but then released them in defeat, giving up resistance. Soon, Peslo was shackled and thrown into the same cell as the nun. After instructing the Marines, Figo went to intercept the escaping giants. At the same time, his prison record book opened to a new page, imprinting Peslo's image. Prisoner, Peslo. Level, SR2. Status, incarcerated. Crime Index, 11. Capture participation, 100%. Selectable gains, shave, stealth, assassination. Character event, can be activated. Crime Index 11. If this were in Impel Down, Figo would have whipped him twice. But Peslo wasn't a pirate, he was CP9. Intelligence agents under the world government were always involved in dirty work. A crime index of 11 was expected, in fact, it was low compared to someone like Rob Lucci. What Figo cared about was something else. If it's only 11, then Kevin's daughter's death might not be related to him. He likely just had information. Figo thought, activating Peslo's character event to confirm. Several familiar scenes appeared. Figo pointing towards the cell, saying the nun was inside. Figo taking out the den mushi twice. Figo slamming him into the ship's deck. Character event activated. Peslo is extremely furious after his mission was repeatedly sabotaged, vowing to exact severe revenge on Figo. Event requirement, let Peslo or help Peslo report Figo to the 5 elders. Damn, should have hit him harder. Chapter 15. Completing participation. Meanwhile, the 2 remaining CP9 members, unaware of the events on the warship, were leading the 7 giants in a dramatic escape. From a distance, they could already see the coastline and the warship. The giants, being tall, naturally had a further line of sight. Suddenly, one giant stopped, panting and shouting, "What is that?" The other 6 giants followed his gaze and noticed a small black dot rapidly approaching them from afar. "Is that a person?" The 2 CP9 members exchanged glances. The male with slicked back hair said, "It must be our comrade who has taken the ship and is coming to meet us." "No, it's not." "What is that?" The giants and the CP9 members could now see the approaching figure more clearly. Or rather, they saw a moving chain. The figure was draped in numerous thick chains that obscured his face, making it hard to recognize him at first glance. But the chains were designed for giants. Peslo wasn't that tall, so the person could only be Figo. How is he here? Both CP9 members were shocked and puzzled. The warden of Impel Down, Figo. One giant recognized Figo first, his face turning pale as he said, "Gentlemen, it seems we won't be able to escape today. We don't know why you saved us, but the giants will always remember your kindness. You should run. We 7 will hold him off." The giant's reaction surprised the 2 CP9 members. No will to fight? But fleeing was out of the question. The giants didn't know, but they did. So, they didn't respond immediately. Another giant, seeing the hesitation, quickly said, "That's Figo, the warden of Impel Down. During his years of guarding Impel Down, there hasn't been a single incident. It's said he dives into the sea every day to battle sea kings, kills them, and eats a whole sea king for a meal. He's a tyrant who does as he pleases. Every now and then, he orders the guards to starve a prisoner to death just for the thrill of it. Or he randomly selects a great pirate to torture and humiliate at will. Countless attempts to assassinate him by the greatest pirates in levels 5 and 6 have all failed. We've never seen him fight, but in our weakened state, there's no way we can defeat him. We're sorry, but your comrade is likely already doomed. You should run. The giants' descriptions were one after another. The two CP9 members felt a bit strange. Is this Figo? The same guy who spent his days sunbathing on the ship, agreeing to everything we said without any temper? Talk about a reputation hit. I hit them because of their high crime index, and it's part of my job. Random starvation must be because their character event scenes made me uncomfortable. From a distance, Figo heard the giant's shouts, and he threw the chains he was carrying to the ground. With a loud crash, the ground shook slightly as the several hundred-pound chains landed, interrupting the giant's conversation. Since you understand, come over and put the chains on yourselves. Don't waste time. And you too. Figo addressed the CP9 agents. How dare you disrupt a navy execution? Your comrade has already been captured by me. Surrender now. Hey? This warning calmed the two CP9 agents. Others might not know, but Figo knew their identities. Capture Peslo? Impossible. We're from the world government, how could he dare? He didn't reveal our identities, indicating he had communicated with Peslo and maybe even reached an agreement. Do we need to stage a scene where we fight alongside the giants against him to make this escape seem more real? That's probably it. The two CP9 members' eyes met briefly, making a reasonable assumption. So, get him. A loud shout, and the two CP9 members charged at Figo first. The 7 giants were startled, some shouting no while following quickly, not wanting to let their benefactors face Figo alone. At this moment, the male CP9 with slicked back hair was already very close to Figo. Can't use the Rokushiki. But since it's a performance, it has to be realistic. The giants' descriptions are definitely exaggerated. We know Figo eats a lot, but whether he can eat a whole sea king at once is still unknown. Anyway, the warden shouldn't be easily hurt by me, he thought, his body beginning to transform rapidly. Black hair turned into light yellow fur, a prominent king symbol appeared on his forehead, and his arms and legs grew yellow-brown fur, transforming into 4 limbs of a large running tiger. Zoan-type devil fruit, tiger fruit. Roar. With a menacing roar, the giant tiger's speed suddenly increased, leaping at Figo from a suitable distance. Zoan-type devil fruits generally enhance strength and speed. As he transformed into a tiger, he gained an all-around boost. The pounce was swift and powerful, but as he neared Figo, he suddenly lost sight of him. Then he felt a sharp pain in his face, and everything spun as the giant tiger was flung into the air like a rag doll, crashing to the ground with a groan of pain. What happened? He couldn't see clearly. Shaking his head to clear his vision, he saw a massive shadow looming over him, his expression turning dull. A monster? How could he be so strong? Why didn't he go easy? Boom! Gripped by the wrist, a 12-meter-tall giant was swung by Figo and slammed down, rendering the bewildered CP9 member unconscious. A few minutes later, Figo, with an unconscious CP9 member on his shoulder, escorted the dirt-covered giants back to the warship, their chains back on. The giants were utterly dejected. Life is a series of ups and downs. Thinking they could escape, only to return and drag their benefactors down with them. No, 3 benefactors. We told them they couldn't win, but they didn't listen. The Marines on the ship, hearing the commotion, thought another crisis was happening. They couldn't believe someone dared to disrupt an execution and succeeded. Lieutenant Commander Shaw will be all right, right? Of course, he would be. If the CP9 dared to kill Marines, their crime index would skyrocket. Figo wasn't worried at all, he was actually quite pleased. This mission was a success. Originally, it was only going to net 1 none. Now, with 3 CP9 agents added. No criminals? Create them. Ignoring Peslo's dark face, Figo threw the 2 CP9 agents into the same cell, then escorted the giants back to their cells one by one, waiting for the prison record to update. Just as he secured the first giant, the prison record came as expected, but it was so quick that Figo was a bit disappointed. The faster the record updates, the weaker the criminals. These two CP9 are just our level? Glancing at the record, Figo was stunned. Instead of opening a blank page, the record opened the corresponding page for the giant he had just secured. And the information had changed. Prisoner, Peter. Level, R8. Status, incarcerated. Crime index, 17. Capture participation, 3% plus 50%. Gains, giant power plus 14 plus 267. 405, level 2 giant toddler. A light feeling surged through his body. His strength had also increased slightly. Capture participation, 3% plus 50%. Gains, plus 14 and plus 267. Compared to before, recapturing the giants had given him an additional 50% capture participation gain, totaling 267 points of giant power. An understanding dawned on him, recapturing an escaped prisoner granted a participation boost. And this boost was half of the normal capture rate. The maximum is 50%. With endless joy and countless thoughts, Figo looked at the other 6 giants, seeing treasures. He even had a fleeting thought that during his time in Impel Down, his vision might have been too small. Chapter 16. The Death of Marines. Gains, giant power, rare, plus 54 plus 540. 945, level 2 giant toddler. Gains, giant power, rare, plus 70 plus 700. 1645, level 3 giant adolescent. Gains, conqueror's haki plus 17 plus 170. 187, level 2 giant warrior. Figo continuously received gains from the 6 other giants on the warship, supplementing the benefits. The level of giant power experienced a significant leap, directly elevating from level 1 to level 3. Figo felt a noticeable enhancement in his physique, with the most crucial change being his extended lifespan. The over 1,000 points surge in giant power unlocked a new threshold. Figo felt a restriction within his body had been lifted, every cell brimming with vitality, almost as if he were back in his teenage years. This round alone extended his life by at least 10 years. However, teenage years? At 28, am I still growing? Amidst his joy, Figo also harbored a slight concern about this. Any growth is fine. But the issue is height. At 2.5 meters, he was already tall enough. Although non-giants can grow up to 7 or 8 meters tall in the world of pirates, Figo didn't want to reach such an extreme height. Being too tall would make finding a wife difficult. He would need to monitor this. If he continued growing, he would need to find a solution. His ideal maximum height was no more than 3 meters. That's a matter for the future. Besides the supplemental gains from the giants, the 2 other CP9 members were also recorded in the prison archives. Indeed, they didn't reach SR level, but both were R9, with crime indexes slightly higher than Peslo's, one at 14 and the other at 16, probably because they had carried out more dirty work. Just like this time, they publicly saved the giants. I said there weren't enough cells. Sweeping a glance over the 7 cells, Figo muttered to himself. With the nun and 3 CP9 members occupying 1 cell, only 6 cells remained for the 7 giants. The 2 smallest giants huddled together in 1 cell. Due to the limited space on the warship, the height of these cells was only 8 meters, making it cramped for giants over 12 meters tall. 2 giants in 1 cell were practically hugging each other. Both of them had tears in their eyes. Boo-hoo, benefactors, we've dragged you into this. As they spoke, they curiously eyed the nun, puzzled about how the 3 benefactors turned into 4, but that wasn't important. Tell us your names, benefactors. Even if we are executed, even if we never meet again, the giants will always remember your friendship. Peslo remained stoic. What's the use? You've all been captured. No friendship will reach Elbaf. With the nun's identity exposed, there will be more trouble. The mission is a complete failure. Everything will have to wait until we return to the Holy Land and meet with the 5 elders. His silence only made the giants more emotional. What kind of spirit is this? We never knew there were such good people among the dwarves. Boo-hoo! Damn demon warden! Even if you beat and humiliate us, the warriors of the giants will not yield. Figo, feeling a bit embarrassed by the crying, thought back to the guards who cried when he left Impel Down. Why do people in the pirate world have this problem? Since he had already received the gains, he decided to give an order, Go clean out the rear cabin and move these 4 into it. Yes, Lord Figo. The Marines immediately took action. Peslo remained silent, cooperating as he was moved into the rear cabin. Once the door was locked, he nudged his 2 companions awake with his toe. The young tiger CP9 felt as if all his bones were broken after being slammed by a giant. Fortunately, being a Zoan devil fruit user, his defense was strong. He groaned and woke up, attempting to sit up but was hindered by the chains. What's going on? The female CP9, less injured, woke up faster and questioned in disbelief, Peslo? That's the nun? What's going on? Was it that warden? What's he up to? The warden, the young tiger recalled, hissing, that guy is a monster. We underestimated him. Peslo, you got captured too, and the giants were brought back. So, now we need to find an opportunity to rescue ourselves and then the giants again, deepening our friendship. Isn't this a bit too convoluted, Peslo? You still think this is an act? Outside. Those daring bastards. Thank goodness Lord Figo was on the warship this time, otherwise they would have succeeded. Lord Figo, we need to check on the island's town. Commander Shaw and the others might need help. Figo, I'll go. You all stay here, guard the ship, and keep an eye on the prisoners until I get back. After running around capturing people, one of Figo's goals was to experience the scenery of the towns in the pirate world, which he had yet to achieve. Everything on the warship was in order. Unless the CP9 agents went crazy and exposed their identities, breaking the unspoken agreement to not reveal the truth about the execution, nothing more could go wrong. This trip, he could meet up with Shaw and take a tour of the town, while the others gathered supplies for the return trip. So, Figo left the warship and headed towards the town. But before he got far, he ran into Shaw returning. For some reason, Shaw was sneaking around, moving from tree to tree with extreme caution, as if man-eating monsters were on the warship. Shaw, why are you coming back alone? Figo asked, approaching. Shaw hadn't noticed Figo, and the sudden voice startled him so much he fell to the ground, pale and trembling. Recognizing Figo, he jumped up excitedly. Lord Figo! You came from the warship? His state was indeed strange. Figo, puzzled, said, yes, what's wrong? There were some incidents on the warship. 3 CP9 agents and 7 giants were captured by me. Good capture. Shaw shouted. Figo. Shaw, trembling, said, Lord Figo, those bastard CP9, those bastards, all the Marines participating in the execution, except me, are dead. What? A few minutes earlier. At the town center, on the execution platform. Half an hour had passed since the CP9 agents had intercepted the execution and fled with the giants. Finally, some brave residents began to climb the platform to check on the Marines. Are they all dead? How could this happen? Is there no one alive? Shaw lay on the ground, almost falling asleep. No one alive? They're all alive. Judging by the time, the CP9 agents should have completed their task. Can I get up now? Just then, a resident checked on him, and he groaned, sitting up while holding his head, feigning confusion. Someone is alive. This lieutenant commander is still alive. The residents were pleasantly surprised, asking, Lieutenant Commander, are you okay? Ah, I'm fine, Shaw muttered, feeling puzzled that none of his subordinates had woken up. Did the CP9 agents hit them that hard? Where are the others and the enemies? He asked. Those bastards who interrupted the execution ran off with the giants, someone replied. Your subordinates, it looks like only you survived. What? Shaw was stunned, pushing aside the residents helping him, and quickly checked on the nearest Marine. No breath. His face turned pale instantly. Impossible. He hurried to check the other Marines. But... dead. Dead. All killed. Chapter 17. The Schemes of Gildikak. What? The Marines were killed. In the stern cabin of the warship, Peslo reacted in shock, looking at his 2 companions. After a brief moment of confusion, they shook their heads repeatedly. No, it wasn't us. How could we have done that? Who else could it be if not you? Shaw glared at the female CP9 member. After you knocked me out, I lay there the whole time. No one else came near before the residents arrived. The 2 CP9 members were filled with both anger and confusion. Peslo, remaining more composed, looked at Figo leaning against the doorway and said, "Warden Figo, I apologize for my earlier disrespect. But you should be able to see that we didn't do it." Figo, of course, knew it wasn't them. There was no need, and their crime indexes didn't match. Was there a third party involved? But some aspects didn't quite add up. If someone could bypass Shaw and silently kill the Marines, they certainly could have killed Shaw too. "Shaw, calm down." Unable to figure it out, Figo tried to soothe Shaw before turning to Peslo. "Right now, you indeed have significant suspicion. To deepen your connection with the Giants, you might have done something like this." "You?" the young tiger glared. Peslo, irritated but seeming to think of something, glanced at Figo's chest and said, "What will it take for you to believe us?" "There's something I've been meaning to ask." Figo seized the opportunity. All 7 giants were previously held in Impel Down. "I've seen their files. The last captured giant, named Kevin, was once a brave giant warrior who defended his village from pirate invasions multiple times. His transition to becoming a pirate is somewhat unclear. I want to know if CP9 played a hidden role in recruiting giants, including the other 6. "We don't have that capability," Peslo interrupted. "Warden Figo, you're probably referring to the death of giant Kevin's daughter. We did investigate it and used it as leverage to recruit him. I even brought some documents with me. The one who truly killed his daughter should be the mind controller, Gildikak." Mind controller. As expected, Peslo knew the truth and even had evidence, so the event clue pointed to him when Figo needed to investigate. This mind controller certainly didn't mean someone who worries too much but rather someone who manipulates minds. Shaw, having stayed in Impel Down, showed signs of fear. But Figo, who had no clue about this mind controller, remained puzzled. Peslo struggled to retrieve some wrinkled papers from his pocket, handing them to Figo. The first thing Figo noticed was a wanted poster. The poster depicted a cloaked middle-aged man with prominent cheekbones and a sinister smile, almost resembling an alien. Gildikak, the mind controller. Bounty, 470 million berries. In an era where the highest bounties were capped at 1 billion and most notorious pirates had bounties of 1 or 200 million, a bounty of 470 million placed him among the top 50. Figo flipped through the papers, finding a 10-year-old news article. The article highlighted a heroic marine couple, featuring an image of the pair impaled together by an iron spear, embracing each other in death. This incident occurred at G21 base. A lieutenant commander there defended the island against pirates, was severely injured, and impaled by a spear from behind. Before he died, his wife ran from afar and willingly impaled herself on the spear, dying in his arms. If only listening, it sounded like a touching story. But Peslo added, "Look at the next photo, taken by a reporter from another angle." Figo turned to the next photo. It showed the same scene and couple but from a different angle, capturing the wife's face. Instead of looking serene and content, her expression was one of struggle, horror, and fear. She hadn't willingly died. That was the first time we discovered traces of Gildikak. He is a string fruit user who loves to manipulate people and create misunderstandings, tragedies, stories, and coincidences, deriving pleasure from controlling minds. String fruit. Figo murmured. He's orchestrated at least 100 such tragedies. The death of giant Kevin's daughter bears his significant marks. He's also a dark world kingpin, even covertly instigating coups in small countries, a pure villain who cares not for personal gain but the thrill of manipulating minds. Upon hearing this, the event regarding giant Kevin changed. The half requiring investigation disappeared, transforming into capturing or killing Gildikak. Concentrating, Figo sensed a directional arrow pointing the way and quickly retracted it. He glanced at the unconscious nun and said, "All right, giant Kevin's case is settled for now. I'll head to the town's execution site to investigate the Marines' deaths. Shaw, stay calm. This matter likely isn't their doing. While I'm gone, keep an eye on these 4 and don't let your subordinates get close, knowing their identities." After Figo left, the 3 CP9 members sighed in relief but felt stifled. Their attitude towards Shaw, who still eyed them distrustfully, was much less friendly. A Marine lieutenant commander scared out of his wits, not thoroughly checking the Marine's cause of death before running back. No independent judgment, directly blaming us for killing your subordinates. Fool. Shaw seethed, thinking back to 7 years ago when Kinch called him a fool, prompting him to transfer out of Impel Down. Now, despite having transferred, they were repeating it. Did transferring out mean nothing? He wanted to unsheath his sword and cut these 3 CP9 members, and then, he actually drew his sword. Both Shaw and the 3 CP9 members were stunned, with the young tiger sneering, "Got guts now? Go ahead, kill me." And trembling, Shaw raised his sword above his head, seemingly ready to strike. "Something's wrong." Peslo, sensing Shaw's unnatural movements, shouted, "Shaw, what's happening to you?" Shaw trembled, unable to respond. "Enough playing," came a clear female voice as the previously unconscious nun opened her eyes. "The feeling of weakness from sea-stone cuffs is no fun." She struggled to sit up, spitting blood, and said, "The world government is indeed unreliable. Lord Gildikak, finish this quickly while the troublesome guy isn't here." "Lord Gildikak?" Peslo was shaken. He, a strange laugh echoed, and a cloaked figure appeared silently at the cabin door. His right hand extended, fingers curled, as if controlling a marionette. Sunlight illuminated his face. The 3 CP9 members turned pale. "Speaking of the devil. Mind controller. Gildikak. Why are you here? That nun, an infamous trafficker, should be far beneath you. Why did you save her?" "Fools," the nun said coldly. "Can't you tell by now? The plan to deceive the giants was Lord Gildikak's idea. Without him, how could I dare to cooperate with you?" "Gildikak's idea? Deceiving the giants to gain their trust, establishing the orphanage, secretly selling orphans to the world government." Now it made sense. Peslo, understanding everything, closed his eyes in despair. "Damn you, mind controller! The world government won't let you go." He. "The world government has never stopped hunting me." Though the plan failed, Gildikak laughed hoarsely, "Your actions were indeed spectacular. No wonder the world government excels at manipulating minds. Now, as a reward, I'll grant you a quick death." He swung his right hand down. Shaw's sword slashed towards Peslo. "Peslo!" The young tiger and female CP9 screamed in terror. Just as the sword was about to strike Peslo's head, Shaw suddenly regained control, the blade stopping just above Peslo's head. He sighed in relief, collapsing to the ground, drenched in sweat. Peslo, astonished, saw a familiar tall figure looming behind Gildikak, casting him in shadow. "Warden Figo." He, Gildikak laughed again. "How strange. You've disrupted CP9's mission. They surely hold a grudge and might report you harshly to the world government. You must have realized this. If I were you, I would have waited another minute, letting me kill them. Wouldn't that be perfect? You killed the Marines, leaving only Shaw to report back, creating the perfect alibi for me." Figo asked. He. "Isn't it interesting?" Gildikak retorted. "Utterly boring." Figo drew his sword and slashed. Chapter 18. Monster. Figo's sword did not hit the real entity. As it approached Gildikak's body, an invisible web made of threads blocked Figo's sword, unloading and resisting the force of the slash, making a piercing sharp sound. He. "I've heard about the underwater prison Impel Down established 8 years ago. What kind of place is it?" Former warden of Impel Down, Gaston Figo. Fine cracks kept spreading from under their feet on the deck. Figo looked down and locked eyes with Gildikak. "You'll know in a few days." Boom. As soon as the words fell, Figo's arm suddenly increased in strength, sending Gildikak flying, crashing through the cabin. At the same time, Figo brushed his hand on his waistband, pulling out a bunch of keys and throwing them at Shaw's feet. He then chased after Gildikak with his sword. "Hurry, unlock us!" Peslo shouted urgently, "He needs our help." The nun shrank back, cursing inwardly. "Why don't you rescue me first before playing with that guy, Lord Gildikak?" The battlefield moved to the ship's center, the commotion alarming a few Marines tasked with guarding the giants. "What's happening? Another enemy?" Another revealed their bitterness, but this time, they clearly shouldn't have come. Gildikak evaded 2 of Figo's slashes, leaping onto the rail, a malicious smile spreading across his face. "Rain of spears." He raised his hands to the sky, spreading his fingers. Countless invisible threads shot skyward, bending back down sharply at a certain height. Dense threads covered the entire central part of the ship, attacking Figo and the approaching Marines. The Marines couldn't see the ultra-fine threads formed by the power, unaware of the danger, still trying to identify the figure standing on the rail, when they were suddenly hit by a crescent-shaped slash on their chests, spitting blood and falling into the sea. Immediately after, the spots they had stood on exploded with dense threads, wood chips flying. It was Figo. In such circumstances, he could only use relatively gentle flying slashes to knock the Marines into the sea, leaving them to fend for themselves. He also needed to defend himself. Fully activating his observation haki, he blocked or deflected each thread with his long sword. The spot where he stood, clinking and clanging non-stop. Other spots, continuous explosions. Raindrops as big as beans hit the deck, making a series of muffled sounds, shattering under the countless blade-like threads. Under the dense attack, the medium-sized warship's draft depth instantly deepened by a fraction, swaying precariously under the onslaught of thread rain. "Quick! Get out of here! Warden Figo doesn't need us adding to the chaos," came a sudden shout from Peslo nearby, and there were no more interruptions. Finally, the thread storm subsided. The spots where Gildekak stood and the inch of ground where Figo stood were the only intact parts of the warship's middle. With a reverse offensive, a crescent slash flew from Figo's sword, horizontally slashing at Gildekak. Gildekak clasped his hands, sending 10 hard threads slicing through Figo's flying slash, wrapping around his sword. With a piercing clang, a broken blade tip flew into the air, spinning down. The battle paused. He. Quite the swordsmanship, saving those Marines while flawlessly defending against my attack. But it seems your sword isn't very good. Figo glanced at his sword. Indeed, it wasn't a good sword. His first sword was a standard guard's sword, and when he was promoted to deputy warden, he got a warden's sword, but it was just a more refined guard's sword. Marines of captain rank and above could apply for one. Compared to his other abilities, his armament haki was relatively average. After all, he had only participated in capturing around 100 or so SR-ranked pirates in 8 years. Each capture contributed 5% capture participation, equivalent to capturing 5 himself, not enough to gain significant armament haki benefits. Now, he could skillfully perform partial armament haki enhancement, mostly due to his training, still far from weaponizing it or nurturing the sword into a black blade. So under the dense armament haki thread attack just now, the sword broke, leaving only half. Indeed, it's time to change swords. Figo tossed the half-warden sword he had carried for over 4 years into the sea. Meanwhile, another sword was thrown heavily from the distance with a whooshing sound. It was Shaw's sword. But as the sword neared Figo, Gildekak hooked his fingers, redirecting the sword with threads, pulling it into his hand. Shaw was shocked. Gildekak swung the sword, smirking, "This sword isn't great either, but I won't let you have it easily. How about a deal? If you kill 2 of those little mice, I'll give you the sword." He. How naughty. Figo laughed along, saying, "Naughty kids need proper discipline. If you had entered Impel Down earlier, I'd give you a month of special treatment, making you enjoy it." With that, he unbuttoned his shirt, pulling out a transponder snail from his pocket. Moshi, Fleet Admiral, I'm in big trouble here, did you hear everything? I can't keep the snail and the warship, what should I do?" The familiar scene made Peslo, who was watching from a distance, widen his eyes, the same trick. Gildekak was also stunned. "Fleet Admiral? The Marines' Fleet Admiral? Who's really naughty here?" A voice came from the transponder snail, "It's okay. I'll immediately dispatch nearby warships to Hozu Island to pick you up, Figo. Bring Gildekak back to headquarters, and I'll personally reward you." "Got it." Figo hung up and flung the transponder snail towards the shore. "Good luck, little snail." This time, Gildekak didn't intercept the transponder snail with threads, angrily sending out 5 colored threads to bind Figo as he threw it. The strong cutting power of the 5 colored threads instantly shredded Figo's clothes, exposing his strong body, continuing to cut into his flesh. But no matter how hard Gildekak tried, he could only leave shallow cuts on Figo's body. Figo's bulging muscles, covered with armament haki, combined with the iron body technique, made his flesh tougher than blades. Figo once aimed to become a graceful swordsman, but the prison file only allowed him to choose abilities from captured pirates. Many pirates used swords, giving him about 1,000 points of swordsmanship gain annually. With training, his swordsmanship experience reached 9,307 points. Still a level 3 sword master, close to level 4 sword hero, could be called a sword hero. But another ability far surpassed his swordsmanship. What's the common ability everyone has? What does giant power enhance besides lifespan? What does eating Sea King meat supplement? What does armament haki rely on? Physique. 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 Still physique. Pop. As he exerted force, his muscles swelled, snapping the binding 5-colored threads, sending them flying, causing Gildikak to stagger, showing surprise. A beast-like aura emanated from Figo indiscriminately. Physique, 12,306. Level 4, Monster. Chapter 19. The Unfazed Nun. In the world of pirates, just how strong can a human body get? Unkillable Kaido? The steel balloon Big Mom? Whitebeard, who could still sink half an island despite losing half his face. Even Akainu, despite his relatively normal size, could withstand the Gura no Mi's attacks with only a few spatters of blood and no severe injuries. Figo once thought that a physique of 1,000 was already incredible, but when his physique surpassed 10,000, he was far from satisfied. He could sense an even higher sky and a more robust future. Higher, faster, stronger. Boom. Like a volcanic eruption, the intact deck beneath Figo's feet shattered under his stomp, and the medium-sized warship finally gave way, breaking in half. Waves splashed up violently. Standing on the mast, Gildikak didn't have to worry about the sea water. His immediate concern was Figo's attack. In a blink, Figo, covered in water droplets, appeared before him, swinging a fist. 5-colored net. Gildikak spread his fingers, and the web of threads that had initially resisted Figo's slash reappeared. However, Figo's punching fist, beyond being covered in armament haki, also ignited into a blazing fire, creating intense friction with the air. Power strike, fire fist. Zing! The web of threads melted instantly. This guy. Gildikak's expression finally changed slightly. He crossed his arms in defense with armament haki, but when the collision roared, he couldn't help but taste blood in his mouth, and he was sent flying like a cannonball toward the sea. He quickly hooked a thread, bouncing towards the shore, rolling to dissipate the force as he landed clumsily. He then saw Figo dive into the sea, and like a swordfish, Figo swiftly shot out, charging directly at Gildikak on the shore. As the warship broke in half due to the successive battering from Gildikak and Figo, it sank at the center. Peslo, Shaw and the 2 other CP9 agents struggled to maintain their balance, each with a dazed look in their eyes. I almost thought I was seeing Vice Admiral Dalmatian, the Tiger Man CP9 agent stammered. He's a monster. No wonder he could fling the giants earlier. Yet, Peslo agreed, understanding why his sneak attack had no effect earlier. 22 years ago, Vice Admiral Dalmatian pioneered and organized the Rokushiki and was one of the strongest vice admirals in the Marines. Many CP9 members, having trained under Dalmatian to master the Rokushiki, were familiar with his fighting style. Figo before them was almost a replica of him. He's only 28, right? Far from his peak, the female CP9 agent added. In the pirate world, the peak period for strong individuals typically ranged from 35 to 50 years old. In other words, if Figo's growth proceeded smoothly, in 10 years, he would undoubtedly hold one of the highest combat power positions as an admiral in the Marines. With such a promising background, Figo even had the potential to become the fleet admiral. The 3 CP9 agents fell silent. Shaw's eyes were filled with envy. 8 years had passed from the same batch of Impel Down, starting as a lieutenant, and how had Figo left him so far behind? The captured nun was equally surprised but unfazed. Did they really think that guy could defeat Lord Gildikak? Lord Gildikak was far stronger than they could imagine. What's happening? We're going to fall into the water. We're going to fall into the water. On the other half of the warship, the bewildered giants called out. The prison cell holding them was sliding toward the sea on the tilting deck. Rescue the giants first. Get ashore. Peslo signaled Shaw to open the giant's cell, and together with his 2 companions, they leaped to the shore. Thrown onto the shore with a heavy thud, the nun coughed a few times but didn't care. She lifted her head, straining to see the 2 combatants fighting farther and farther away. Under Figo's full-powered stomps and punches, the ground became pitted and cratered. As the nun looked up, she saw Gildikak's web wall shatter again, sending him flying from a punch. But she remained unfazed. Sure enough, while Gildikak was mid-air, he spread his hands wide, releasing countless threads. As he clasped his hands together, the threads combined into one. Here it was, Lord Gildicac's super whip. Hundreds of threads combined into one, roughly as thick as a lock of hair, with cutting power increased by dozens of times. The nun had seen Lord Gildicac easily slice a building in half with this move. To choose to face it head-on? Foolish. Double power, fire fist. Two flaming fists collided with the thread whip, and the resulting shockwaves spread like slashing auras, slicing nearby boulders in half. A few drops of blood dripped from Figo's fists to the ground, but with his strong physique, minor injuries like this wouldn't affect his combat ability. And the super whip from Lord Gildicac, it broke? Boom. Gildicac was sent flying again. But the nun remained unfazed. Sure enough, while retreating mid-air, Gildicac moved his hands like a conductor, pulling countless white threads together to form a giant white bird. Feather strike line. The giant bird dove towards Figo, shattering into countless threads as it neared, engulfing Figo and turning into a white nest. Excellent. Trap him, Lord Gildicac. Those white threads had a unique toughness that other threads lacked, unbreakable by anything. It was said that Lord Gildicac had once trapped 2 pirates with over 100 million bounties in this move for 10 days and nights. When released, the scene inside was indescribable. When people are starving, they can do anything. Trap him, Lord Gildicac, then come over and kill these CP9 agents and rescue me. Boom 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 boom. The sound of drums suddenly echoed from within the white thread nest. In the nun's incredulous gaze, fine cracks spread across the nest's surface. Gildicac continuously reinforced the threads. But it wasn't fast enough to outpace Figo's destruction. With a resounding explosion, Figo, like a wild bull, crashed into Gildicac, sending him flying and spitting blood. At the same time, 2 threads shot towards Figo's eyes. Nice, attack his weak spots. Though they missed, the nun remained unfazed. Lord Gildicac had discovered this brute's weakness. No matter how tough his physique, could his weak spots withstand the attack? Both combatants increased in speed, and their collisions became more frequent. Gildicac's attacks shifted from broad strikes to precise ones, targeting Figo's vital points. Thread saw. Leg guillotine. Thread shot. Until a moment later, large-scale threads spread out again. The ground itself turned into a sea of threads under Gildicac's power. Here it comes. Lord Gildicac's devil fruit had awakened, capable of turning all non-living matter into controllable thread waves. As the thread waves surged, Figo was caught like a small boat in a storm, seemingly on the verge of capsizing. Is it over for him? A fiery fist suddenly broke through the thread waves, followed by tiny sparks filling the white thread sea, burning it to ashes instantly. But the nun remained unfazed. Lord Gildicac's attack wasn't over. The remaining white threads shot up high, forming a net in the air and closing in from all directions like a birdcage, cutting towards the center at high speed. Here it comes. Lord Gildicac's sacred guillotine, with awakened thread powers, cutting 10 times stronger. Figo clenched his fists tightly. Explosions roared continuously. Dust and white threads filled the air, obscuring the details of the battle. Suddenly, a thread shot into the sky, and Gildicac's figure soared upwards like a bird, rising higher and higher. Here it comes. Lord Gildicac's sky thread, allowing flight by hooking threads onto clouds, perfect for travel and escape. Wait, escape? A figure followed closely behind, grabbing Gildicac's legs and slamming him into the ground. Amidst the earth-shaking impact, the nun's expression gradually turned dull. You bastard! Let's die together! Gildicac's enraged shout echoed. Boom! 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 Thunderous sounds reverberated for 3 minutes. Silence! Amidst the smoke and dust, Figo, covered in thread cuts and half-soaked in blood, dragged the limp Gildicac out. He's really tough. I'm starving. The nun panicked. Is he going to eat me? Chapter 20. The Return Voyage. On the shore, 7 giants sat in a row. Their holding cages had sunk into the water, leaving Figo to drag only one back, tossing the defeated Gildicac inside. Shaw also unlocked the shackles on their legs to get them ashore. Although they were technically free to run, they all sat obediently, one more compliant than the next. Run? Whoever wants to run can try. Despite still having chains on their hands, even if they didn't, they noticed their 3 saviors were still serving under the oppressive watch of the demonic warden. Not far away, a bonfire blazed, and the 3 CP9 members had clear divisions of labor. They continuously cut, bled, and roasted the massive corpse of a nearby sea king, quickly supplying Figo with meat. Watching the tens of tons of sea king gradually disappear into Figo's stomach, both the tiger man and the female CP9 member exchanged silent glances. So it turns out the joke is on us. The giants were telling the truth. Figo can indeed eat an entire sea king in one meal? So those stories about him abusing and humiliating prisoners are probably true as well? Can't mess with him, can't mess with him. After all the sudden changes, Peslo's desire to report Figo to the five elders had waned. Figo normally didn't eat this much, but after receiving a large supplement of giant strength and enduring a fierce battle, he urgently needed replenishment. His strong digestive ability helped him quickly convert the consumed meat into energy. After devouring 3/4 of the sea king, Figo belched contentedly, rubbing his full stomach as he stood up. That's about enough. Thank you for your hard work. You can roast the rest and share it with the giants. The giants sitting in a row were moved to tears. We actually still get to eat? Shaw, how's the little snail doing? Figo asked from another direction. No good, we can't contact headquarters. The den mushi that was thrown to the shore wasn't entirely destroyed, but its shell was cracked, and it couldn't get a signal to reach headquarters. It would probably need time to recover and repair. Only 6 Marines remained, each wounded and bandaged like Figo, resting on the shore. Early on, after the first piece of sea king meat was roasted, each was given a piece to fill their stomachs. In that case, take care of the little snail, Shaw. Fortunately, I had already contacted the fleet admiral earlier. He said he would dispatch the nearest warship to pick us up. It shouldn't be too long. After all, this place was quite close to Elbaf. The fleet admiral would certainly consider the possibility of the giants coming to rescue the 7 captives and would expedite their retrieval. With everything arranged, Figo found a flat piece of ground and lay down to rest with his eyes closed. Not far away, the nun in sea stone handcuffs also lay on the ground, having completely lost hope, and instead felt calm. She asked, "Could you give me a light for a cigarette, Marine? Quit smoking, it's banned in Impel Down." The nun fell silent. The giants admired her courage. Despite being captured, she still dared to make demands. Seeing Figo close his eyes to sleep, they ate their meat in small bites, afraid of waking the demonic warden, feeling weak, pitiful, and helpless. Attempt to escape? Look at that cage with the pile of mush inside. Look at the shattered ground. Look at the 2 halves of the warship that hadn't sunk yet. Don't kid around. Better alive than dead. Figo wasn't actually sleeping but rather tallying his gains. He had 7 rewards to choose from now. Once truly captured, even if released, the rewards wouldn't disappear. The 3 CP9 members primarily offered Rokushiki-related rewards, which Figo wasn't in a hurry to choose. He could figure out Rokushiki himself. There would be a rapid enhancement period from practicing it. When he couldn't improve through practice anymore, he would use their rewards to level up. The remaining 4 rewards were from the events involving Duham and the giant Kevin, as well as the capture rewards from the nun and Gildikak. Oh, right. The giant Kevin still didn't know that the real culprit who killed his daughter was the Gildikak Figo had just fought and captured. Figo didn't bother to tell him. Whether to recruit him into the Marines or whatever else would be up to the fleet admiral to decide. Kevin's reward was the easiest to choose. Reward, Giant Strength, Rare, plus 187. 1832, Level 3 Giant Adolescent. Next was Duham. Back then, his observation haki had been activated by Figo. Duham hadn't mastered armament haki, nor did he use swords. Figo naturally chose to strengthen his strongest abilities among the dozens of scattered abilities. Reward, Physique plus 63. 12,399, Level 4 Monster. A fierce battle and a hearty meal of sea king meat had actively increased Figo's physique by over 20 points. Now it was time for the main event, the 100% capture participation rewards from the 2 SR level criminals. The nun's reward options were Devil Fruit Development, Disguise, and Business, none of which particularly appealed to Figo. After some consideration, Figo chose Devil Fruit Development. Although this ability couldn't be activated without eating a fruit, and due to his fishman strength, Figo wouldn't consider eating a fruit unless he found one that was particularly suitable and tempting. But enhancing his Devil Fruit Development ability could still aid Figo somewhat in battles against Devil Fruit users, assisting him in assessing the enemy's situation. Reward, Devil Fruit Development, not activated, plus 2093. 2093, Level 3 Devil Fruit Proficiency. A 100% capture participation rate, a crime index of 91, and an SR3 level brought Figo 2093 points of rewards in one go. The highest amount ever. And this record was about to be broken. Criminal, Gildicac. Level, SR9. Status, incarcerated. Crime index, 113. Capture participation, 100%. Selectable rewards, armament hacky, doctor, observation hacky. A crime index of 113 broke the highest record Figo had ever seen. The selectable rewards were also unprecedentedly rich. Most people had dozens of abilities, and it was lucky to get one high-quality option among three. Gildicac, however, offered both armament hacky and observation hacky at once. The doctor ability would be good in other circumstances, making it a tough choice. Ultimately, Figo chose armament hacky. Reward, armament hacky plus 3,277. 6,355, level 3 armament hacky proficiency. It directly doubled. Now Figo could quickly reach the corresponding data level through practice and might even achieve full-body armament hacky. If he could personally capture 100 or so pirates like this, Figo would soon become the world's strongest. But that was just a dream. In the current era, Gildicac was already one of the top 50 most wanted pirates. Other big pirates wouldn't just stand there waiting for Figo to capture them. More importantly, many of them might still be beyond his current strength. This battle had roughly shown Figo his limits. The change from SR9 to SSR1 represented a significant leap in strength. He had struggled to capture Gildicac, and he likely wasn't a match for SSR-level pirates yet. He couldn't guarantee victory even among SR7, SR8, and SR9, as battles involved many factors. Against someone like Sugar, even an R level could pose a threat. Looks like I won't be capturing SSR-level pirates anytime soon. Impel Down? Even Impel Down didn't have SSR-level criminals yet. The deepest cell held SR9-level prisoners. SSR probably represented the top tier of the sea, equivalent to Admiral level, or at least someone capable of holding off an Admiral for a while. In other words, SSR1 is equivalent to an average Yonko commander in the future? SSR9 is the peak of Roger and Whitebeard? And what about Rox? Or Imu? The closer to the top, the harder it got. 8 years of hard work and effort in Impel Down, and now he was just at the threshold of the pinnacle, barely touching it. With these thoughts, sleep gradually overtook Figo, and he finally dozed off, truly exhausted. Until nightfall, when Shaw woke him up. "Sir Figo, the ship to pick us up has arrived. It's time to head back." Figo opened his eyes and responded, "They're here already." In the end, he didn't get to tour the island town. Next time, for sure.